All right, people, here we are. Another Monday morning together. We've been doing this for quite some time now, since the beginning of the pandemic. That's when this started. We started going live every Monday morning. We've only missed a couple. We've done pretty well. We usually miss holidays, something like that. But here we are. Another spring is here, I hope. It teased us a little bit, and now it seems to be trying to head back to winter. But I hope everyone is doing well. Everyone who's watching, and thank you for watching when you do on Monday mornings. I'm very sure that this is a different type of conversation than you're used to seeing maybe on podcasts or on other Facebook Lives. We try to keep it interesting. I try to keep it interesting. And there's always something to take home. So today we're going to be getting into my favorite subject because it is the most needed, the most necessary subject, which is keeping the weight off. This is all anybody cares about. Anybody who's lost weight before. This is, by the way, a big reason why, in my opinion, Ozempic is such a big deal. Because people are weary of taking weight off and not being able to keep it off. So what do? They look for some kind of an outside solution that may not be a solution at all. And it's okay to shoot yourself in the gut once a week. And it's okay to, risk a lot of these problems that are the result of these weight loss drugs. By the way, I say Ozempic, there's a lot of them. Wegovy, Mounjaro, Ozempic, then you have the different uh, types, right? Because Ozempic is a semaglutide, but then there's something called a liraglutide and a tirzepatide, and you don't even want to know. Nobody wants to know. It's part of the problem. They want the results, and they don't want the frustration of losing weight only to put it back on. So let's get into it a little bit today. It's very interesting. I The other night I had dinner with a friend of mine who's a chiropractor. So I had dinner with her and her boyfriend. And her boyfriend's an interesting guy, super bright. He actually creates software for medical practices, chiropractic practices, just healthcare practices in general, right? And I'm probably the last guy in the world that he wants to sit beside at a dinner. Because as soon as he tells me that this is what he does for a living, my big mouth goes off. I have to comment. I have to, first of all, please understand something. I am not the kind of person that is constantly frustrated. There are those. I am intermittently frustrated. And my biggest source of frustration is probably tech. So immediately, the place I want to go to is you people, right? Because I blame people like him. These, sometimes they call them nerds or eggheads, which is not nice. They're doing something to help us, right? It's a service. It's to make our lives easier, and in some ways, it does. But again, you don't want to sit next to someone like me if you're a tech guy, because just like you wouldn't want to sit next to me like if you're a chef, because I am going to give you my opinion. It's a terrible habit, and I don't always do it. Sometimes I have some discipline about it, right? Can you imagine like being a chef and you sit next to somebody and you say, "Yes, I'm a chef. I create French cuisine," and that person's like, "Do you have to use so much cream all the time? What's with the butter?" I mean, it's almost a Seinfeldian, right? Like you just can't help but criticizing, and it's not always criticizing just to criticize, right? Because I did share my frustration about tech, about software, but also made suggestions, uh, which would improve products. But it turns out that I'm not the only one who does this. Every time he speaks to a healthcare practitioner, he gets suggestions. So this guy has a tough job, right? With software, with when you're talking about practice management, you're talking about the ability to make notes, documentation. You're talking about merchant processing. You're talking about insurance. There's just so much that goes into it, right? It's a really hard thing, and the holy grail is one software that does everything and that makes life easy for us. So this was the conversation we had the other day. What does this have to do with keeping weight off? Trust me, we're going to get to it. A couple of days later, I went and I visited my friend at her office so I could see this software in action. And, she showed it to me. It so happens he came by, and so he was showing it to me as well. And I was looking at this software, and again, I couldn't help it. But we're having a conversation, and I say to her, okay, what exists in order to keep people on their care plans? This is one of the most important things in practice for every reason. If a person doesn't come in, if they don't stick to their plan, then they're not going to get the results they want. Then they're going to be upset. Then as practitioners, we fail, regardless of the type of practitioner. When we're talking about a multi-visit type care plan, what are the chances of getting the results if the person doesn't stick to that care plan, right? So obviously here in our office, people come in for weigh-ins, and that's a big part of the care plan. But to have people come in for their visits is super important, and so it's necessary to track that. So I was asking what exists to help with that, right? And it turns out that you know there's a limitation to what software can do. So what you'll find, and everyone has seen this, is that there are integrations with other types of software. So there's an integration that she had that helped with practice management, including keeping people on their care plan. And we were going over it. What happens if somebody misses their visit? Like, how does this particular software help? And this was an integration, and she showed me. And it kind of tracks it. If someone misses their appointment, you can press a couple of buttons, and there's a list of people who've missed their appointment. So they obviously have to be followed up with. But it doesn't integrate to the point where if you make a subsequent appointment with them on the other software, that it will automatically not be on that report anymore. It'll still show up as a missed appointment, and you have to manually go in and show if they've been followed up with, or if a subsequent appointment has been made, and they can be deleted from that particular report. That all has to be done manually. And I'm like, what? What do you mean that has to be done manually? You have to go in there every time? This should be an automatic thing. It should do it automatically. I have a great idea for this. And I expressed my idea to her, and I will express it to her boyfriend, I think, in the future. Because it's just a very intuitive, seemingly easy way to do it, is my idea, but that doesn't exist currently. And we were having this conversation about the necessity to manually change these things, to manually notate it. And I was like, no, that should be an automatic thing. You should be able to get a notice about it automatically. And she said, work is hard. And I just thought that was so astute, because we forget, we want to make it so work is not hard anymore. That's what we're trying to do, that everything is so automatic that it's idiot proof, that you have a software system, you don't have to upkeep it. Like, it does you don't do it. It's not a tool anymore. It's the thing. And I still think we should work towards that, but it needs to be understood that all tools have their limitations. Tools have to be worked, they have to be utilized. And that's what she reminded me of. And I laughed about it. I still laugh about it. Work is hard, or at least you have to do hard work, whatever that's considered. Like, I mean, if the attitude about it is right, it's not hard anymore, right? It's just activity towards a purpose, towards a good purpose. It doesn't, have to be digging ditches, and I guess even that could be enjoyable if you surrender to it, and if it's what you want to be doing, and you enjoy the working out part of it. But work can be hard, and it's just a truism. And similarly, when we were having dinner, my friend's boyfriend and I, when we were talking about the software, and I was trying to improve everything and make it perfect, right? And he was saying how, from an engineering point of view, sometimes we just have to accept that there are no solutions, or there are no great solutions, or the solutions aren't as ideal as we'd like. And he gave me an example. He said, poverty. There's always going to be poverty. There always has been poverty, and that's a frustration. We don't want there to be, but it's always going to exist, and the resentment of that, or the inability to accept it, is in and of itself a problem, because perfection is the enemy of the good. And so he was saying it's like that also with software, but it was and I think he mentioned it was some kind of a principle of engineering. It's one of these things that eggheads talk about in egghead school. That there are things for which there are no solutions, and we just have to accept it. And once we accept it, we can be somewhat liberated, and we can go from there. But that inability to accept it, the fighting of it, the resistance, that in and of itself might be a bigger problem than, well, it's not a bigger problem than the actual problem, but it prevents the best possible solution. How's that? So again, it was a great conversation. It was eye opening in a way, because of just things that we forget that we're thinking and we're working with, that we shouldn't be. Like, we're working with incorrect assumptions. So let's take this now and apply this to keeping weight off, because I feel like we see this when it comes to the subject of keeping weight off. The first problem is lack of understanding. And believe me, this is a problem. It's twofold. It's a twofold problem. First of all, most people don't understand what it takes to keep the weight off. But here's the second problem. The second problem is the resistance to understanding it, to accepting it. And this is how it plays out. I'm speaking to someone the other day. Let's call her Donna. And she says she's lost weight and gained weight. Every once in a while she calls me. She does a program. She loses weight. She does wonderfully on the program. And then she struggles. And I hear this every day. This is my life. Just like my new friend, the software engineer, hears his issues about tech every day from his clientele. I hear struggles with keeping it off from my clientele. So we're talking about it, and I say, you know what, Donna? It just so happens this has been my focus. I've been looking at this issue. In fact, I wrote a book about it. And the book is not a technical book. It is not a how-to, but it discusses the principles of what it takes to keep the weight off. And you know what she says? Well, here's what she doesn't say. She doesn't say, oh my God, thank you so much. This is what I've been waiting for. I can't wait to get this book. I can't wait to read it and learn it and understand it and apply it to my life. That's what she doesn't say. What she says to me is, I don't read. Okay, then. Uh, how am I supposed to respond to that? Where are we supposed to go from there? I mean, I know there are other solutions, but we're talking about a 46-page book that's double spaced, right? But here she has this big issue with keeping weight off, and presumably she wants a solution. Presumably, right? Some people seem to want to live with problems instead. And then when I offer her a solution, pardon me, and mind you, she doesn't know for sure that it's a solution, but we have a little conversation about it, right? There would seem to be some hope. Her first thing is, I don't read. Okay, well, how can I help you then? Give me a moment. Sorry about that. I had to ugly cough. I didn't want anyone to witness that. So going live is hard. Work is hard. This is one of the things that happens. What if you have a coughing attack? Well, you got to do something about it. But I, her resistance was to reading. Her resistance was to doing something about it. Now, I might be able to come up with a solution about that, and I should, and I likely will in the future, which is to make an audiobook out of it. And this way people can listen in their cars, etc. But what I was proposing wasn't that difficult, but for whatever reason, it brought up her resistances. And we all have these resistances, but they get in our way. It's a necessary precondition to keeping the weight off. I mean, let me restate that. Understanding what it takes is a necessary precondition to keeping the weight off. Now, even if someone understands what it takes, they might not perform it. There might be more resistance. There might be some kind of unwillingness, but at least they'll have that fundamental understanding, right? We always have free will. We can always make choices. But her resistance was to taking the simple step that it would take to give her at least the understanding so she'd have the possibility of keeping the weight off. So again, where do I go from there? How can I help you? So this is a bit of a conundrum, but I think if we understand this principle that work can be hard, life can be hard, keeping weight off can be hard. And if we're willing to do the hard sometimes, or the seemingly hard, because more often than not, that's what it is, right? The seemingly hard, then we have a much better chance. Then we can at least open something up that will give us a chance. We can get to the runway at least. And so this is just food for thought, no pun intended. Food for thought about how we operate in the world. And why do I go into how we operate in the world? Because weight loss has everything to do with that. We want it to be a purely technical thing. Do this, do that, take this shot, take this pill, and you'll lose weight and you'll keep it off. But no, it involves action on our part. It involves choices, and it involves understanding. So if there's resistance to understanding, then it's probably not going to happen in the first place. And one understanding that everyone needs to have is that, yes, it can be difficult at times. And if we want to create a system or some kind of method to make it so it's not difficult, we might be just living in fantasy land, and we might have just shot ourselves in the foot because there's no chance for it to happen. Okay, so that is what I wanted to express to everyone today. I hope it makes sense. If you have any feedback, if you have any questions, write them. Let me know somehow. But I do have a wonderful book called Keeping It Off. You can all get it. It's free right now. It's been free for too long, frankly. But it's on the website, thintechweightloss.com. So download that book and learn those simple principles about it. Okay, and you may or may not do it, but at least you'll have that understanding about what it takes. Okay, the other thing is this is spring. What comes after spring? I'll wait. Summer, right? I mean, this is the time where we're going to be wearing less clothes, where we want to lose weight. I There's going to be a spring spectacular. I will be sending out information about that, and that's it. Let's go. Let's have a great week. I'll speak to everyone next week. Bye.